Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder, and I'm still waiting to hear and connect with you over on Patreon. So please check the link at the top of the show notes, wherever you're listening from. You can also head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and you'll find our Patreon link over there. And you'll find our sponsor page. And if you can give them any of your business, that would be great because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we're still hosting our ongoing giveaway as well of people who leave reviews around the internet. Just leave a review wherever you can, if it's written or stars, and send a screenshot to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com along with your address, and we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And do it. People are doing it.
They are doing it.
And now Dianne has our review of the week.
I found this podcast when I was pregnant, and thank God I did. In preparation for my baby, I read 4 books, attended 2 in-person classes, and read all the blogs I could get my eyes on, and all of that paled in comparison with this podcast. I had an unplanned cesarean birth, a short stay in the NICU, and then was hospitalized a month later with a pulmonary embolism with an infarction, a blood clot in my lung, and partial lung death. And because of this podcast, because of this podcast, I remain confident in my babe and my breastfeeding capabilities. We are now 4 months into our breastfeeding journey and going strong. These ladies not only educate on breastfeeding, but also provide information on a wide variety of newborn motherhood topics. They answered questions I didn't even know I had, and I'm so thankful that I found this podcast when I did. Boy, girl, you went through a lot of stuff.
Oh my God, that is insane and so scary.
So scary.
I'm so glad everything's okay now.
I know. And that you made it through your breastfeeding journey. That's amazing, because that is really hard to do when you have those curveballs thrown at you like that.
Yeah.
And it is so fun. I love how she said, like, I read 4 books. I went through all these classes. Like, the books and stuff, they just, I don't know. I always tell people, like, babies don't read the books. They have no idea. Like, babies are just...
No, and so, I mean, there's better books nowadays, but so many of the books just don't have great information in them.
No, they don't. And a lot of people say, I read all the books. And it's like, but they just don't. Babies do what babies do. And they all do something different. That's why I don't know how there's a book on, this is what your baby's going to do.
Right.
Because it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Well, good for her.
I know. Yeah. Good for you. And thank you for sending that in for us. And I'm glad you found us too. It's awesome. You're doing a good job.
Yeah. And today we have Rebecca Michi. It's so exciting. She's back again. And we're going to be talking about how sleep develops in the first few months. And let's get to it.
Yeah.
I am here with Rebecca Michi. She's been on the show before, as you know. She's a big celebrity around here. We are excited to have her back. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
One of the things, well, not one, our big thing today is going to be about newborn sleep.
Yes.
Is that right? Kind of how sleep develops?
Yeah.
What's normal?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know what's not normal as well.
Most of our expectations are actually not normal when it comes to newborn sleep.
Yeah. I think it's probably the expectations that are not normal, right?
Yeah.
Kind of whatever
definitely.
your baby's doing has to be normal because they're just new. They don't know.
Exactly.
So do you in your practice, because you are a sleep consultant, you work with families who are struggling with sleep, who usually, I'm assuming, come to you and say, oh, we're not getting any sleep, or my baby has a hard time sleeping, or along those lines. What's the age that you usually see?
So the average age of the child with the family I work with is about 8 months. That's about the average age. But I will every single week get questions from families with newborns, children who are under 12 weeks, asking, what can we do? What can we do to get better sleep? This is just unsustainable. And so I will ask them a lot of questions. They have a lot of questions. So yeah, every week I am answering questions on newborn sleep, though I don't really work with those families because it's impossible to be.
Right.
So I don't begin working with families until their child is at least 12 weeks. And then we're not even doing anything big at that age.
Mm-hmm.
But
So if somebody came to you with like an 8-week-old baby, you would say, there's nothing we could do right now. Like your baby is still.
Yeah, I would say probably a little nicer than that.
I'm sure that you would. That would not be my strength. There's nothing we could do for you. All right.
Yeah, suck it up. Come on.
What did you expect?
Now, I'll ask how their baby is sleeping. What's actually happening? Because you never know. There may be something that is really, really unusual and something that does need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So I will ask, what's happening? A lot of the answers that I get are, my baby will only nap during the day when they're being held.
Mm-hmm.
They are waking X amount of times throughout the night and not treating it as nighttime. They're having awake periods during the night. And then I have a lot of people will say about having the day and night kind of mixed up, that there's that confusion between day and nighttime. So those are sort of the generally what I get from people. And I totally understand it. It is really frustrating when your baby will only contact nap. It is, because you want to have a shower, do the dishes and just have a time of not being touched, is all very, very nice. And so, it is frustrating. And of course, waking up repeatedly during the night. Yeah, I think we can all agree that that's incredibly frustrating.
And I think going into parenthood, like with a lot of things, sleep certainly included, everything else having to do with parenthood, I feel like we expect, like we have no idea what actually is normal, what actually babies are like. Like we don't really see babies in society. they're...
Yeah.
I don't know. We just don't keep them separated. We just don't really know. So we're like, oh, that must be like the movie. Whenever Josh, my husband, and I are watching TV shows, there's a baby involved. The baby's like in the corner sleeping, and Josh is always like, that is ridiculous. The baby would be crying right now. They're arguing. The baby would be screaming. And like you think, I remember thinking like I was going to have a baby and I was going to go back to work and Josh was going to work from home and the baby would sleep in a bassinet next to his desk.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes, I'm sure we all have these, these ideas of what have, I think one of the funniest ones is that we're not going to change. The baby will adapt to our lifestyle.
Yes.
And just think, oh gosh, just wait. No matter how laid back and easygoing your baby is, you're going to be making changes. That baby is not going to completely adapt to you because you're the grown up here. You're the adaptable one. And though it sort of like makes perfect sense, of course you want to go out for dinner. Of course you want to still have friends around and you still want to do everything. But when it comes down to it, especially with a newborn, that's just not at all. I don't know anybody who is doing that ever in the history of ever. That's not happened.
No. So one of the, I think probably, well, obviously one of the biggest misunderstandings is sleep.
Yes.
And how, I don't even know. I mean, like development of sleep, you barely hear about this.
Yes.
So how does sleep develop?
Yeah. So it's, we'll talk about newborn sleep, which is sleep within the first 12 weeks. So newborn sleep is just this stage within this first 12 weeks. And it actually goes from this 12 weeks starts from due date, not birth date. So birth date will impact how sleep develops. So it's actually going from due date. So that first 12 weeks. So it could be, either way, it could be that it's shorter, it could be that it's longer, depending on when your baby is born. At 12 weeks, sleep completely changes, completely shifts. So we can definitely talk a little bit about how that changes. But this sleep within the first 12 weeks is newborn sleep. This is the only time that we sleep this way, and it's very normal to sleep this way, and there's nothing to change, and there's nothing to do. So when your baby is born, they're pretty sleepy. I think definitely those first few days they're pretty sleepy because for both the birthing parent and the baby being born, giving birth, is pretty tiring, is pretty exhausting work for everybody involved. And so babies are pretty sleepy for those first few days. And you may get a false sense of security here that you have a good sleeper, which is definitely not necessarily the case. You may have a normal sleeper, let's say. So being sleepy those first few days, and obviously that impacts everything, breastfeeding, everything. Then baby begins to wake up a little bit. This will also depend on where their due date is. If they were born early, they generally seem to be a little bit sleepier than those who were born on due date or a little bit later, seem to be wake up a little bit sooner. And when they are doing their waking up, you are really beginning to see with their awake periods, though they're not very long, you will definitely at this point, even from within a week, get a sense of who your baby is. You're beginning to see who they are and their personality and their temperament. This is definitely becoming evident very, very early on. Awake periods are very, very short, could just be a matter of minutes. So your baby will wake up, you'll do a diaper change, and then inevitably you're going to be feeding them because hunger is dictating wake ups at this age. That's just, they wake up because they're hungry. And you will need to feed them and they're just going to fall back asleep. That's just kind of how everything happens within that kind of first week, maybe even a couple of weeks. You may have that just waking up, short periods, diaper change, feed, not really having any awake time, any play time. You're probably not really getting into any tummy time, anything like that within those first couple of weeks. And so sleep then, you think sort of like, okay, we got this. We got this. We're sleeping.
This
they
is
wake
great.
Up, yeah. And they fall back asleep. This is amazing. And you may get some pretty good chunks of sleep as well at that point. You maybe and a good chunk of sleep is 2 hours. That's a good chunk of sleep within this age. You may get a little bit longer. Your pediatrician will let you know if you need to be waking your baby to feed, and you really should be in those early days because we don't want them going too long, obviously, between feeds. So chances are you're going to be waking your baby, but they're more often than not going to be waking themselves, and you maybe get in some really good 2.5 hour chunks of sleep there. But shorter periods of sleep is also completely normal. If your baby is only sleeping for hour stretches, also completely normal. And again, hunger may be dictating those wake ups. So actually feeding your child is actually going to help. It doesn't mean anything. There's no there's no indication if your child needs to feed every hour or every 2 hours that there's anything wrong with your child's sleep or with your feeding or anything like that. Everything is new and everyone's trying to figure everything out. When we get to around 2 weeks now, or when we're beginning to wake up a little bit, we'll be getting some short periods of awake. But this is not going to be every single time that your baby wakes that they're going to want to have 20, 30 minutes of awake time. This may be just for 1 or 2 awake periods during the day that they're beginning to have these little awake periods. Oftentimes we'll actually see these awake periods happen at nighttime. And this is not necessarily when you want those awake periods to be happening. But it just, a lot of times it will be. Remember, hunger is still dictating wake ups here, but it may be that your child needs to have kind of like 2 or 3 feeds before they're then going to have a little awake period. Then they're going to have an awake period, and then they're going to go to sleep, and then they need 2 or 3 feeds before that next awake period. So you're going to get these awake periods happen during the day. They're also going to happen in the middle of the nighttime. So it feels kind of wrong. Your baby was sleeping pretty good at night, and now they're having some awake periods, long awake periods, where you need to be kind of entertaining them. You can't just get them straight back down to sleep. They want to have that awake period. So just have the awake period. You can still keep things kind of sleepy and nighttimey, but you just have the awake period. Your child is going to be back to sleep quicker than if you're trying to get them back to sleep for that entire awake period.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think of this as like a regression.
Yes.
Like, we're going backwards. But actually, you're going so fast forward.
Yes.
That, in development, this is like such an important and busy time for development that the brain is just...
Exactly.
They're just awake.
Yeah.
Like, how can you possibly sleep through this?
Exactly. So, and it's important that you have the awake time so that they then can sleep. Because the reason that a baby sleeps is because sort of their brain gets kind of full of information, all this new information. And it's just it's full. And they just need to sleep to just kind of clear it out. So if your baby is awake and you're trying to get them down to sleep for that entire time that they're awake, they're not going to necessarily be falling asleep because there's nothing to kind of clean out. There's no sort of stimulation there to be kind of clearing out. So it's best just to, let's just kind of like hang out, do some things.
I feel like isn't that true for adults too? Like if you're, I was just having this conversation with Jack, who is your former client.
Yes.
He was in his room all day yesterday, just like looking at his computer, looking at this stuff. And then at night he couldn't fall asleep. And I was like, you were in your room all day. Like you didn't even see like daylight on your face or move your body around. Like you gotta like exert some energy in order to be tired at night.
Exactly. And that's the exact same thing for newborns. It's a very different type of energy, but needs to sort of, you need to have a reason for sleeping. That's what you need. You need to have that reason for sleeping. Just have the awake time. Have the awake time and just your baby will be back to sleep much, much quicker. But it just feels, we think we should be sleeping through the night. My baby was sleeping really well at night. And now why are they waking up? Well, that's just really normal.
And what age group are we talking about right now? Again, can you remind me?
This can be even from very, very early on, within a few days, going on to sort of going on for weeks. It depends on how kind of quickly your child wakes up. So it can be within that first week. We'll definitely be seeing this within a couple of weeks.
Because depending on the parent, they're having to get back to work. They're having to, do all these things where they're like, oh my God, I just need to go to sleep, which is why really sleep consultants, not your flavor, but other sleep consultants are like have business, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, I'll get your baby to sleep all night.
Exactly. But actually it's not kind of normal that they should. Babies shouldn't you shouldn't be sleeping through the night.
You don't want your young baby to be sleeping for those really long periods of time.
No, not at all. Not at all. Waking up is actually a good thing. It means that your child the brain development is good because they're learning. They're busy learning all of these things, and as well as they are sleeping, they're coming up and waking up sooner. Obviously, if they're getting a 2-hour stretch as opposed to a 4-6 hour stretch, and actually the waking up part is good. It reduces the risk of SIDS, the waking up part does. So that is actually something that we want. It feels kind of wrong, but it's actually at this stage, it's a really, really good thing that your baby is waking up, because newborns don't get into a very deep sleep. You may feel like they do. And it may be that you're there because you can move them around. A lot of newborns, you can move them around. You can lay them down. You can pick them up. You can do diaper changes and they're still sleeping and all of these things. You may actually think, oh my God, they are in a really deep sleep. They don't get into the same deep sleep that we do. Right. So they're just bouncing around. Sleep cycles are quite different to ours, but they don't get into that deepest sleep. So it just, again, this is completely normal for this to happen. Don't compare a newborn or infant sleep to anything like your sleep, because it's completely different. One of the things is they don't get into that deep sleep. They kind of have a dream sleep. Newborns do have a similar REM sleep that we do, which is a dream sleep, but it's not exactly the same. So we don't actually know if newborns are dreaming, because the way that we would find out is asking them. That's how we do. And they're not very responsive to answering that question for us. But I imagine that they are. I imagine that they're, because that's what, dreaming is. It's kind of processing things. Yeah. And that's why we sleep, is to process things. Yeah. So I imagine that they are. Dreaming is probably about boobs, I imagine.
Yeah. 90% of the time. That must be all they think about. Yeah.
Exactly, because that's all they're doing initially. So imagine that's it. Yeah. So they're kind of doing a weird dream sleep. They're not producing any melatonin, which is something they are. We produce melatonin when we get into a dark, dim environment. And obviously melatonin is a hormone that induces sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. We want that. Newborns produce a very, very low level 24/7, regardless of in the deepest of dark or the brightest of light. They're still producing a really teeny tiny amount of melatonin, which is not actually going to have any impact on sleep. It's that tiny, that amount. So it's not going to be impacting sleep whatsoever. And this is within this kind of like this first 6 weeks that this is the case, that this is happening. When we then we're beginning to have more awake periods, as we're getting sort of, a couple of weeks in, we're having some now longer awake periods. As these longer awake periods are getting longer, this is now where we're thinking that, okay, now this is nighttime is becoming a bit problematic because we're now having longer awake periods. It's not just 15, 20 minutes. We're now maybe getting to 30, 40, even up to an hour of awake during the night. During the day, you may be seeing this again, some nice longer awake periods, completely normal, just feeding your baby and giving them the help that they need, feeding them. All of these things are all completely fine to do during those awake periods. Get them back to sleep when they're ready to get back down to sleep. Probably going to be associated with a feed, not a problem. Never ever a problem. Feeding your baby to sleep is never ever ever a problem, and you should definitely be doing that at this age. Within this first 12 weeks, I'm sure there's going to be something somewhere that says you shouldn't be feeding your baby to sleep.
Right.
Try not feeding your baby to sleep. Try feeding a newborn baby and them not falling asleep. Good luck with that, because that's just not going to.
Right. I don't understand. Why don't we want the easiest way to get them to sleep?
Exactly. It's always good to have something that works.
Yeah, we're like, it's too easy. You're developing a bad habit. What? It's like 6 weeks old. Come on.
God, yeah, no, don't even get me started on bad habits. There are, smoking is a bad habit. Feeding to sleep, not a bad habit. That's completely
There's a
fine.
reason they fall asleep so easily.
Exactly.
Doing
it
that,
works. It's really, really good. Just do it. If it works, do it. When we get to about 6 weeks, now things are beginning to change. And this is when we think that actually nighttime sleep begins to develop. So first 6 weeks are just like wild. I mean, I think we can all agree, if you've had a newborn, those first 6 weeks in every way are really wild. And sleep is definitely one of those. Nighttime sleep begins to develop at around 6 weeks. But this is also then the age that we have our peak of crying and our peak of fussiness. So during the day, your child will they may seem sort of quite uncomfortable because they're now getting really, really fussy. You may have you're definitely getting those cluster feeds in the evening. So there's, like very short period of sleep, waking, needing to feed, seeming kind of fussy, uncomfortable, mad, and then repeat all evening until boom, your child will then kind of go down for the night, which is often quite late. 11, midnight, 1 a.m., really, really normal. And they will begin to get a little bit of a longer stretch then. So your evening will be very like little cat naps. And this can go on for hours and hours until then your child then will begin to get a longer stretch. And now they're kind of like, that's that nighttime sleep beginning to develop. So they begin to get that longer stretch. This is completely normal. And this is just something that you need to just kind of ride out. And it is frustrating because this is your evening and you just want to just sort of like maybe watch a bit of crappy TV or something. You're just kind of done with the day at this point and you just want to just have a little bit of time. And it's the exact opposite. You are not getting that time at all. It is way more hands-on than probably any other part of the day that you've had. So sit down, make sure that you've got a drink, make sure that you've got the remote and just feed your baby and then, help them when they need the help. When they wake up, feed them again and just repeat. And then they'll get that at some point. And that will be fairly consistent, that point that they'll start getting that longer stretch of sleep. So they're not waking up every kind of 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They'll get that longer stretch of sleep. And that will be, it's somewhat of a consistent time. it doesn't mean it's going to be exactly 11 or midnight, but you'll have like a window where that will happen, about an hour window, maybe between like 10:30 and 11:30, that your nighttime sleep is going to start. And they'll get a little bit of a longer stretch then. That's their nighttime sleep beginning to develop, is when that happens. But those kind of challenging evenings are just, don't fight it. And that's one thing that I'm often telling parents, is at 6-week mark, their child is needing way more help in the evening. They feel like they're going backwards. Definitely. They've got way more crying, way more fussiness just kind of during the day, during the night. And they think that, well, something's going wrong. And it's not. This is completely normal. Everything's kind of ramping up to week 6. Your child's waking up more. And as they're ramping up to week 6, they're getting more and more and more fussy. Week 6 is that peak of that. And then they sort of like come out the other side, and slowly things begin to sort of like calm down a little bit. Your evenings will be getting back on track. So for that next 6 weeks, we're sort of like coming out of this big kind of peak of crying, fussiness, and just uncomfortable. I think it's an uncomfortable stage for everyone, week 6, because you feel like 6 weeks in, you should be getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
And I remember personally feeling that I should, okay, we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And I should feel like actually a little bit more in control. And I didn't. I felt very out of control because nothing was actually going with how I wanted it to go. And that was hard. That was really, really hard for me to sort of get to grips with my first. With my second, been there, done that. Know exactly kind of like what's going on here. And I'm not going to say I embraced it, because I didn't. It wasn't something that I was embracing and really enjoying, but I just accepted, and I just kind of wrote it out.
Yeah, I have a friend who had a baby. I don't know. This was a few years ago now, but I was talking to him on the phone. I said, "So what's it like? How was your, first?" The baby was like 1 by then.
Yeah,
and he goes, if you just accept the fact that you're not going to sleep, it's fine.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, it's not that bad if you just accept the fact that you're not going to sleep. But we're obsessed with sleep.
And totally. I mean, we love it. We love it.
Yeah,
We're really,
I'm not saying, it's a great obsession. I love sleep too.
Exactly.
But we really focus so much on like, I need sleep. And I do too. I get it.
Yeah.
But it is like a main focus of your whole life.
Totally. Because life is miserable when you don't get enough.
Yeah. Yes, it's so much harder.
Everything is hard. I mean, we all like 2-year-olds when we're sleep deprived. Yeah. Life is hard.
Yes.
It's even down to, your relationships suffer if you're sleep deprived. The foods that you crave are different when you're sleep deprived than when you're not.
Yeah.
And everything, just your cognitive function, everything is impacted when you're tired and you're sleep deprived. And remember, sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture.
Yeah.
And it's really, and when you have a baby, you can see why. Because it is torture.
That's what the baby's doing to you.
Yeah. We could probably take them to the UN and we could
they should be brought before a panel of judges or whatever.
Somebody needs to talk to them about this.
They need to be held accountable.
But it's really effective. That's why sleep deprivation is used as because it is really, really effective. And I think when you have a baby, you can completely understand that. It's hard. It is really, really hard.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, like specifically with that really restless evening phase, which I don't know as far as like the rest of beyond newborns ways, but I don't know if that comes back or if we go through phases of that. But I feel like in those times, like where the baby will settle and you think they're settling and you think they're going to sleep, and then they kind of wake up again.
Yes,
like that's like the worst part. It's like,
oh my God. Yeah.
They're settling. Yeah. It's going to be, and I wonder if that's like a really hot time where people are like, something's wrong.
Yes.
Like they keep settling and then waking up again, and then maybe settling and then they're waking up again. And so like clearly something is.
Yeah. Why can't, they seem to be falling asleep, but now why are they waking up within 10, 15, 20 minutes? They're obviously not going through a sleep cycle and they seem to time it to either be as soon as you get into bed or just as you're drifting off. Just as and then you kind of like you're woken up. And again, I think it's definitely more of a you problem than a baby problem.
Yeah,
definitely is, because that is really, I remember feeling that, falling asleep and then being woken by, baby in bassinet next to me, beginning to wait, or not beginning to awake, it just sort of like now crying. It's not just beginning to slowly kind of wake up. It's, oh my gosh, you're awake. And I remember sort of like waking up just sort of like with a start and just feeling, and, and I'm not proud to admit this, but feeling kind of ragey, really kind of like,
God, totally.
really ragey with it. And just like, seriously, what, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And just, thinking that, that I also remember thinking, and I will very, very openly admit this, I remember thinking, I don't think my baby likes me. They wouldn't do that if they liked me.
Right. Yeah. Like my baby's we're not bonding. This is not the like peaceful, lovey thing that I thought it was going to be.
Exactly. I thought we were going to be having the most amazing time. Yeah. Not, it was everything, but
there's like really, no chemistry between us at all.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. And this is actually this hard, challenging newborn stage is the reason I have a short age gap between my two kids. I have a 14-month age gap between my kids because I disliked this newborn stage so much. When we got out of it, when we sort of like hit 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 14 weeks, when I sort of like finally thought, oh my God, I made it. I survived that.
I didn't like that either. No, I did not like that stage.
And so I said to my husband, if we're going to have any more kids, it's got to be sooner rather than later, because I just want to get that over and done with. Let's just get that over and done with. So when my eldest, when he was about 3.5 months, we started trying for my youngest, and I found out I was pregnant, I think the day before he's turned 7 months old.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Wow. Oh,
and then my youngest, she was a month early, just to make things a little bit more, just a bit more challenging. She was a month early. So so I have the utmost sympathy for parents who are going through this newborn stage, because I found it pretty hellish. I really, really did. It was tough. It was really, really tough for me. And there's a whole bazillion reasons. I was living in a different country. I didn't have great support. It was just a whole, and it could have been very different, but it was what it was. And I didn't necessarily embrace it as much as I thought I would. I thought it would be the most amazing, just sort of like, angels playing harps, and I'm just sort of like in this sort of like glow of just, love. And I thought I was going to be the most amazing mom ever. And it ended up being the exact opposite, where I wasn't particularly having fun. And it was.
I feel like it's just the biggest like bamboozle. Like it's just the biggest trick. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that society thing. So, and you can't complain. You can't have all these negative feelings. You can't really be going through what you're going through, because it's looked so down upon. And that's really how everybody just sort of gets brushed under the rug. We don't want to hear about it. You should just enjoy. I remember my dad saying, like, I don't remember what was going on, but he was like, just enjoy it, like and I'm like, there's like not a single thing of this to enjoy. Like how,
I just wonder, like, do we keep all of that quiet so the human race keeps going?
I think so. Because so then when you're going through it, you're like, oh, I mean, that was literally for me. Seriously, I was just like, something is wrong with my baby. Yeah. That was the biggest thing. I was just like, something's wrong with my baby. He's not breastfeeding. He's not sleeping. He's not doing all of these things that that babies are supposed to do. Yeah. He wasn't doing any of them. And I'm like, he's broken. Yeah. Something's happening. Yes. I need somebody to fix him.
Mm-hmm. But then that was very evident with you and with Jack very early on, because of Jack's personality.
Right.
And how that impacted those very, very early days. And that's the same with me, with my eldest. Very intense, very spirited, very spicy, feisty. And that made sleep really challenging. It made feeding it just made life really, really challenging for that, because you imagine just, babies will fall asleep anywhere and all of these things. And when you have a child who has a bit more of an intense and spirited personality, that is not the case. They don't just fall asleep anywhere. They don't sleep for long stretches. They need a lot of help with everything. Life gets pretty overwhelming for them pretty quickly. Their brain gets full really, really quickly because they're so observant, so awake, so into everything. Their brain gets full really quick, and they need to then they get overwhelmed. And we're looking at awake windows and all of these things. Oh, you should be able to be awake for this long. And then we're not following their lead, and we're pushing until their brain is just like, stop. And that's when they kind of melt down, and things get too overwhelming.
Yeah. Speaking of wake windows, I keep hearing this term. It's not a term that I remember from when my kids were very young. I don't know if that's true or if I was just not paying attention. I was too tired. And I keep hearing it in like kind of a sleep trainee kind of way. So what is the deal with this? What does this? I mean, I get it, like a wake window. I mean, like how long you're awake, I guess. But
so wake windows sort of like came around and came as sort of like being this not new, but this great thing, because the alternative is to have a routine, a schedule. So that means a schedule is we're going to get up at this time. That means you're going to go down for a nap at this time. You're going to sleep for this long. And then you're going to go down for a nap at this time and this time. And that works for a lot of kids and a lot of families. It feels very restrictive. It feels very that, if we've got to be napping at this time, we're not going to be able to be out for that nap. And if we've got to be up at this time, that means if they're still sleeping, do I need to wake my baby up? And I think so that would kind of be the way it was for a really, really long time. And people would stick with that. And then as sort of, generations kind of changed and evolved. And I think sort of this is something that we definitely started seeing probably with my generation of, parenting, of having newborns, which is Generation X, that we would begin to see this, that, we're a bit more of baby's going to fit into my lifestyle rather than me, just following baby's lead, and we're going to be strict. That's where kind of awake windows sort of came in, that, okay, we're going to have a maximum awake time or an awake time of this long. And it's age appropriate. It's an age appropriate length of time that your baby should be awake for before they go down for their next nap. And I like awake windows. I do like awake windows, but only if you use them right, because it is that maximum awake time. That's what you want to be aiming for. So if you have a 3-month-old, that maximum awake time should be about an hour and a half, but it can be less. That's maximum. So it can be less because it depends on the length of the previous nap as to how long your awake window can be. So I think actually it's really confusing. It's nap math. Nap math is really, really confusing because you're having to think about, okay, our nap before wasn't a great nap. It wasn't an hour and a half nap. We got 47 minutes. So how long should my awake period be? Because I can't go now to an hour and a half because we only had a 47-minute nap. So should it be like an hour? And then as your day's going on, you then have to think about, what were the previous naps like? How long were those previous naps? Because the longer the naps were earlier in the day, that's going to play a different with your awake window late in the day. So nap math is really, really confusing. I do like to like an awake window because I think it's a good guide for this is how we should, if we're not asleep by this time, we should be thinking about getting down for a nap at this time. So that I think is a good idea. But again, we have a lot of child's personality, just all sorts that comes into this, because those things are going to determine what naps are like, how they fall asleep, whether they need help getting from one sleep cycle to the next, which is completely normal. Short naps are very developmentally normal from around 12 weeks. It's as that nighttime sleep continues to develop. Naps, it seems to be at the expense of naps. Once we go through a very big shift at around 12 weeks, naps get really, really short. One sleep cycle is fine. Again, this is where we think something is wrong. My baby was napping for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and now boom, suddenly they'll only get one sleep cycle, but I can help them through another sleep cycle, but then I have to contact nap. Something's wrong here. Something I need to, no, that's really, really normal. One sleep cycle is really normal. If you can help your child from one sleep cycle to the next, even if that's a contact nap, do it, because it means that they get a good nap. You're not necessarily going to get them doing it independently. Right. So again, that's a very, very big misconception about how babies should be sleeping, is that they should be able to put sleep cycles together. And if they can't, they have to be sleep trained to do it. And they don't, because it's a developmental thing. So even if you have a sleep trained baby, doesn't mean that they're going to be getting long naps and putting sleep cycles together for daytime, because it's a developmental thing. Short naps, developmentally normal. Naps don't even begin to develop until sometime between 4 and 6 months of age, and they develop individually. First nap of the day, then second, and then the third. So again, it's like looking at this is actually normal. So one sleep cycle, yeah, it's tough. And it may mean that your baby is only napping for 45 minutes, which means that your awake windows are kind of out the window. That's awake windows I love, but then I kind of hate as well. They can be really helpful, but they can also just be I can't keep my baby awake for this long, or they're not tired at this time. Yeah. Again, very much sort of like a temperamental thing, as to see, tired signs. I'd prefer to go from tired signs. A lot of children, even very, very young children, these 6-week-olds, some children will show you tired signs before they're, just as they're beginning to get tired. The majority of children are showing you tired signs when kind of they need to be asleep. So they're showing you tired signs actually when they're kind of overtired signs. They're not necessarily showing you anything beforehand. And so that makes getting them down a challenge, because if you're looking for tired signs in a child who is not showing you tired signs before they get tired, you'll think, okay, look, oh, you're yawning. Let's just clear up what I'm doing. Let me just finish what I'm doing. Let me grab you. Let me give you, a diaper change. Okay, now let me get you ready for sleep. Now let's work on falling asleep. That could be 10, 20 minutes after you saw an overtired sign. And at that point, they're really overtired. And that could be even harder then to get them down to sleep. So if you have a child who is showing you tired signs when they've got overtired, and tired signs can be, obviously yawning, kind of glazed, sort of glassy-eyed look, pulling on ears. Red eyebrows is a huge one when your child gets red eyebrows. Some children will get very chatty and just sort of like be, even babies will get kind of quite vocal, but then others will just silence. There's just kind of nothing, but sort of blank stare as well, just kind of blankly staring at things, all tired signs. And a lot of those are overtired signs as well. So if you're seeing tired signs and you're really struggling to get your baby down, it may be that they're showing you those tired signs. They're actually overtired signs. And at that point, when they're showing you the tired signs, it would probably be easier to get them down to sleep if you were helping them to sleep at that point. And that may be where an awake window is going to be helpful. If you're because that way you may be able to be helping them to sleep at that sort of that right time when they're ready for it, in this sort of like little window that you have of this perfect time to get them down. If your child is not great at showing you those tired signs, an awake window can certainly be your friend.
Yeah, and if you miss it and your baby's kind of overtired by the time you realize it, maybe the next day, you start trying just a little earlier, a little before that.
Yes, definitely. But that's when you need to be kind of like looking at the clock.
You need to look at the clock.
Yeah, you do. And so some people will just set an alarm on their phone, just as this is 10 minutes before the end of your awake period. Okay, we need to start get them ready for that nap. Some people will do that. And it really depends on the child, though. Some children can, those laid back, easygoing kiddos can fall asleep anywhere and will nap really great and have no issue whatsoever. Children who struggle a little bit more and get really kind of overwhelmed, the overtiredness is a real big deal for them. Overstimulation as well, real big deal for them. And those kiddos are the ones you want to be a little bit more mindful of that timing. And it is just let's just give it a go. Let's just see. If I try and sort of keep our awake window, I've got an alarm set for an hour and 20 minutes so that I'm going to be trying to get them down. If it doesn't work, don't carry on doing it. If it works, great, keep doing it. But every child, we can say, oh, your awake window should be about an hour and a half. But every child is completely unique. It could be that they need an hour 45 or an hour 15. It's not sort of that perfect just because their age says that they should be able to be awake for this long does not mean that they are going to be able to be awake for this long. Children have their own sleep need the same way that adults do. You probably need a very different amount of nighttime sleep than I do. And we know that that's completely normal. Everyone's completely unique. Some people can manage with 5 hours. Other people need 10 hours at night. Both completely normal. And for children, even infants, it's exactly the same. Some children need less sleep than others. Just totally remembering that as you're reading anything online, remember that your child is completely unique and they have their own individual sleep need and nap needs and timings and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is there's many strongest cases against sort of the blanket sleep training is that every baby's different.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not going to work. Sleep training, generally, when there's like a sleep consultant who's got this product that they're selling or whatever, they've got it's one thing.
Yes. And generally that is, though they will say that they're a gentle sleep consultant.
Right.
It's cried out. It's a variation on cried out. And they'll also say words like evidence-based. That's another one that drives me mad.
Right. We throw that around a lot.
Yeah. The evidence-based there was something that somebody told me about a very well-known sleep course out there that I think it was crying with a purpose.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Crying with a purpose. Well, doesn't all crying have a purpose?
Yeah.
It's a way of communicating, and it's a way of communicating something, whether that is, oh my gosh, you've really annoyed the heck out of me, whether it's I'm overwhelmed, whether it's I'm really, really hungry, or whether it's I'm really tired and I need some. That's what every cry has a purpose. There is no unpurposeful cry.
Right.
And yeah, it just hurts my heart. It really, really hurts my heart because people are doing this with little teeny tiny babies.
Yeah.
And they're leaving them to cry with a purpose.
Ugh. Yeah, that's really sick, actually.
Yeah. Quite frustrating. So yeah, there are ways that you could improve your child's sleep without doing any sleep training whatsoever, and get more realistic, sleep expectations. Normal sleep, what you can expect from your child's age and their personality, how you can expect them to sleep. And there's so much that you can do. And that's really what I like to focus on, is doing those things. I remember when we worked together, gosh, that was so many years ago.
I know.
We worked together.
He's 13.
Oh my gosh. Wow. When we worked together, we really changed sleep around, but we didn't do any sleep training.
No, not at all. We did a lot of parent training.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
we did.
I didn't know anything. I just didn't understand him at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
and it's just working with him and getting them the best possible sleep, which was not perfect. We didn't get perfect, but we were able to make it easier, make bedtime easier, make during the night easier. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't sort of like, as I'm sure some people would see as perfect, with a child who's going down to bed at 7:00 and will just sort of like quite happily take themselves off to bed and then fall asleep with ease and then sleep for the entire night and happily wake up at 7 a.m.
Yeah, that is not something to expect.
No.
If that happens, like, you should celebrate and you have a very easygoing baby.
Yes.
But I don't think any parent should expect that to happen, because that's just not, that's not normal. It's not a problem.
No.
It's not at all a problem, but it's not like, it's just not what you normally see.
No, and it's not. It's really the amount of children who are sleeping that way is minuscule. It's absolutely tiny. I mean, when you look at the percentages of children at different ages that are sleeping through the night, again, that's something I don't think sleep consultants want you to know. Sleep consultants don't want you to know that only 30% of 3-month-olds are sleeping for a 6-hour stretch or longer. Yeah. Because that doesn't sell it for them. That waking up is completely normal. If they're sort of like saying, I can get your baby sleeping through the night. Well, actually, if you look at the amount of babies who are sleeping through the night, there are 30%. Well, that's a 6-hour stretch or longer. It's not even through the night. Only 30% are doing that, which means that 70% are not. So the way into the majority of babies are not doing that. And actually, the percentage who are sleeping that 6-hour stretch or longer is actually higher at 3 months than it is at 6 months. So,
really?
Actually, yeah. Just when you think, well, it should be, at 6 months, it should be sleeping through the night. Yeah, no, actually, if you're looking at latest studies that have been done, that's actually not the case. The latest studies are showing actually kind of like what's realistic. A lot of the studies that you see out there, which are still referred to by books, pediatricians, sleep consultants, were studies that were done in the 50s and 60s. And so that's obviously, that's even before I was born. I mean, and that's just like many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And they were done on very small percentages of white middle class formula fed babies.
Right.
Formula back in the 50s and 60s was really, really different than it is now. It was a bit more cement-like. So it would really sit. So, I mean, a baby couldn't help but sleep, I think, after being filled up.
I think that's, you can't, they couldn't stay awake.
Exactly. So those babies were sleeping for really, really long stretches. But actually, when you look at it, most of the majority of babies are now actually not. And even with, when you compare sort of like breastfed, formula fed, even now, they're not sleeping like they were back in the day. They're not sleeping like that anymore. Waking up is way, way, way more common. And shorter durations of sleep as well is actually sort of pretty normal. The average amount of nighttime sleep for any age child, this is even going from newborns right up to into school age, is somewhere between 10 and 11 hours at night. But we all have this obsession with 12 hours at night. Yeah. It's got to be a 12-hour night.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
That's such made up. It's so made up.
Yeah. So again, it's like, why my baby's sleeping through the night for 10 hours, but how do I get them sleeping for 12 hours? I'm not the person to come to ask that question because I'm just like, feel lucky that your baby is sleeping through the night for 10 hours. And don't tell too many people that, because they're not going to be happy that
they would not be happy to hear
complaining about only getting 10 hours at night.
Oh, well, you've shared so many wonderful things today to help us understand what is normal. And I don't want to say not normal, because most of it's normal. All of it's normal. Have you ever seen anything that was not normal where you were like,
Sometimes I do, but it's oftentimes when there's a medical issue, sort of maybe some kind of reflux, tongue tie as well. We'll definitely see sort of like sleep disrupted then. But when there's only ever when there's sort of like something medical, which we're normally aware of beforehand.
And that's why. And that would make sense. I mean,
sometimes reflux can go undiagnosed for quite a while. But that's often, that will be why. But then we see that kind of sleep is a certain way. Or the sleep is kind of like not really happening. And it's more of the wake ups are a certain way. Real quick, urgent, and just lots of other symptoms of reflux as well. But I've not seen anything that is unusually abnormal with babies at all. Everything is kind of
and
like
you've
the
worked
same.
with hundreds and hundreds of babies.
Thousands of babies.
Thousands of babies.
Thousands of babies. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you can, so obviously you shared so much today, but you share a ton on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Which is Children's Sleep Consultant.
Yeah. Children's Sleep Consultant. You can find, just put my name, Rebecca Michi.
If you put in Rebecca Michi,
yeah. You'll find me.
Also, and if you're listening now, you can just scroll down into the show notes and we'll have a direct link right there because you're doing these awesome little snippet kind of reels of just lots of really great information, and you can learn a lot about sleep that way. And if people are listening, and this is a sleep consultant that I highly recommend, if you are having some issues, and people can find that on also in the show notes, a direct link to hiring Rebecca yourself. Mm-hmm. And if people are unsure, if something is, can they say like, hey, this is my issue. Do you think you could help?
Oh, totally. Yes, totally. You can always set up just like a 30-minute call just to see if we be a good fit. But I think that you can sort of I think most people who set up a call know. I think I've got pretty much how I'm going to work on my website, what you're going to get on the website. So but you can always set up a call if you want to, and you can just do that on my website. You can just set that up on my website if you've got sort of like some questions, how we could potentially work together or what that would look like. But there's many different ways that we can work together. I work privately with families, but I also then have really kind of gentle sleep courses and things like that.
Oh, that's right. You do have those courses. Yeah.
Yes.
Those are awesome.
Yeah. And they have, we've got a Facebook group. We have weekly Q&As. So there's, it's just a great way to get questions.
I don't know if I know about your Facebook group. We have to put that in there.
It's a brand new Facebook group.
Okay. What's it called?
Is it bad then? I don't remember.
But yes.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, it doesn't matter because you're going to scroll down. You're just going to scroll down into the show notes and you're going to find all of the links to all the things that you need to find Rebecca and, take advantage of it because it's hard. We feel you. It is so hard. And, having education will take you 90% of the way.
Yeah.
And then there's a few tips and tricks that you can find.
I think as well, just feeling normal, just feeling amongst other people who are all in the same place you are and are not necessarily wanting to be getting 12 hours at night, though that would of course be lovely, but are not necessarily, but just want the best possible sleep that they can get. I think that being amongst sort of like being amongst those people, they're your people in that who are going to help you and support you and kind of commiserate with you, give you all that support you need.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for a wonderful visit. We'll hit you up again in 2025.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's lovely to speak with you.